I thought I'd share with everyone a story from my youth. Just one of the deepest musical experiences I've ever had. I mean, just molded me on such a fundamental level as an artist. I mean, and just as an appreciator of music and just as a person existing in the world. But there's so much talk about trauma nowadays, and this is sort of the opposite of trauma, right? Like whatever the inverse of that, where it's like something that hits you like boom, you're never the same. Your brain is rewired on a neurological level. You know, even before we would talk about the soul or whatever, it's like something that just changes your brain, but for better, for in a positive sense, not a wound that has to be processed, but a increase in power or like a revelation, like an initiatic experience into some kind of just like spiritual grip that like I'm still processing. I was 16. Again, the story is not that crazy, but the effects are crazy, and it's just so deep to me. I was 16, and I was spending a summer in Boston doing this the Berkeley Summer Jazz Program. It was like a jazz camp, playing guitar, and we got to stay in the dorms there at Berkeley. So this is like your first time being alone, like in a city. I mean, it's kind of a big thing. I mean, it's Boston, but whatever. So yeah, my roommate is this guy. I won't say his name, put him on blast, because he's like, it'll come back to him. But he was like this real Boston hardcore kid. He was like really all about like Blood for Blood, Slapshot. He was like on that vibe, and a tough kid, relatively, I guess. A lot of fights. So he moves out of the dorms like just unexpectedly, like mid camp session, and all of a sudden there's this dude just in my room, this other guy, his friend, Danny, who's just there a lot, and he's got his saxophone and he's playing. So I'm like, oh, I guess it's another guy from the jazz program who's staying there. Then I come to realize, like, no, he's just some guy staying there, just a friend who's just like moved into the dorm for the summer. Nowadays I'd be like, what the fuck? Those days it's like, oh cool, this guy's even cooler than the last roommate. Fun. Some like Boston like thug dude. And this kid's name is Danny Edge, and he plays the tenor. And so one day Danny's like, hey, you want to come to this lesson with me? And I was like, lesson with who? He's like, the lesson with this guy in Cambridge. And I'm like, you play, like, I'm not understanding like the depths here yet. So I'm like, well, you play saxophone, like, so you want me to sit in on your saxophone lesson? Like, what am I gonna, He's like, it's not exactly a lesson, man. Like, you got, just come check it out. And I'm like, okay, fine. So we go. I remember, I don't know, we took the T or whatever it's called, the train. Then we like walk really far and stuff. He's telling me, he's like regaling me with these stories about like Boston hardcore scene and all the fights he's getting in, and the beat down outside JP Licks, and the beat down outside Newbury Comics, and the beat down near Wrigley. I mean, just this like, it's like a little slice of life, not what I expected to get at like the jazz camp. So I really like this kid, a lot of charisma, always bringing girls around the dorm. So we're walking. We go to this lesson with this guy. He's like this old dude that Danny's gonna introduce me to. So we go to this place, this guy's house. It's kind of like ramshackle, like just cluttered with all this, just I don't know, just one of these cluttered like weirdo old guy hoarder type houses. This dude looks like exactly like Santa Claus, right? Old hippie and stuff. And he's a bass player. He's got a bass, and he's like, Mingus. I'm like, yeah, yeah, I know Mingus. And he's like, he's like, that song, that tune, Wednesday Night Prayer Meeting? I'm like, no, I don't. He's like, it's off the Live at Antibes record from '61. I'm like, all right. I hadn't checked it out yet, but he says it's based on this one riff. He plays it on the bass. Dun da 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 dun, dun da 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 dun, dun da 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 dun, dun da 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 dun. And then repeat. It's like, all right. He's like, we're gonna play this riff, and I'm like, cool. So we're gonna We like take turns like improvising or what? He's like, no, just play the riff. Just gonna play that riff. Three of us, guitar, tenor sax, bass. We played that Mingus riff for 3 hours, man. 3 hours with no breaks, no words, no discussion. And this is not, I'm not like twisting it in my memory or the time amount. It was for 3 hours we play this riff. This is sober. This is no drugs. This is not even weed. I mean, we were just like completely sober, 16-year-old. And just that was like the opposite of a traumatic experience. Rhythmically, to sink into a groove for 3 hours, it fucks your brain up in the right way. It's like I'm so grateful for that experience. I'm like more grateful for that than like a lot of things that you would think would be a bigger deal than that in one's life. I mean, this kid Danny Edge, man, he really gave me a true gift, man, because my rhythmic feel, my time feel was like several notches up. I mean, I've always had good time, but this was like my pocket became like deep. And I mean, it kind of made me realize, I'm like, as much as I hated hippies in high school, if you're into metal, you're into hardcore, you're into weird noise stuff, you hate hippies, right? Especially when hippies then meant like Dave Matthews Band, like whatever. So, but I had to realize then, like, no, if you're gonna be a deep musician, you kind of have to be a hippie on some level. Like, you do have to have that kind of like groove, man, like the vibe. Like you kind of have to say vibe. If you're a musician, right? Just say vibe. You got to say it. Groove, pocket. These things, like if you don't get into that hippie thing, like you kind of miss something about time. And yeah, that changed my body, man. That changed my body and soul. So yeah, I mean, I'm forever grateful to Danny Edge for bringing me along on that. And sadly, just last year, I was just reminiscing on life. I was like, whatever happened to Danny Edge? Man, I'm searching around, and he died. He died. I couldn't even find the obituary, but I sort of sniffed it out because he ended up playing in a Boston band called Kings of Nothing, that are kind of like I guess this was like in the late 90s, this band Kings of Nothing. I guess they're like they were like a rockabilly band, like an old fashioned 50s style retro band with like horns and stuff. And I saw pictures. Yeah, it was Danny playing. He was playing baritone at that point. I did some homework, and I mean, I think he died soon after that. I mean, I think he died in like the late 90s, man. I don't know what from. I don't know if he was into drugs or not. He didn't seem like it, but people get into stuff fast. So I don't know. Maybe it was something, rough, some roughneck stuff. But it's really sad, man, because that guy was a great dude. Like really, like he was. He was like one of those guys. These guys that when you're young, at least like I don't know, there would be guys that would. They're like on some bad path and they know it, and they kind of they warn you not to go down it. You know what I mean? Like he's like telling me these stories of like, the beat down at JP Licks and the beat down, and it's like, I mean, I could reminisce on that, like, haha, like tough guy shit. But then it's like, no, that's not cute or funny. He died, so you take things more seriously as you get older because you see where things go. But yeah, he was one of those kids who was like, he's like, yeah, I'm telling you these fight stories, but keep doing your homework, man. You're gonna go to college, like that kind of, that like kid who's your age, but he's like wise beyond his years, because he's like kind of into some, like in trouble to some extent. But in any case, 3 hours of groove, 3 hours of a Charles Mingus riff, neurological shifting, gaining increasing powers. If you are a young musician, I really encourage you to somehow sniff out some kind of situation like that, preferably with an older musician who you respect, or someone with a big Santa Claus beard, some hippie guy. as far as how that little tale, my encounter with this guy Danny Edge goes. Very grateful, and rest in peace, Danny Edge.